The sun had set, and the village was silent, except for the sound of whispers carried by the wind. In a small, humble hut deep in the forest, a young girl named Amara sat, staring out into the dark. Her grandmother had always warned her not to look at the stars too long, but tonight, she couldn't help herself. She wondered if they held the answers to the questions that had been haunting her all her life. For as long as she could remember, Amara had been raised by her grandmother, a woman with eyes that held secrets and a heart that seemed both warm and cold. She had always loved Amara, but the truth that Amara didn't know weighed heavily on her grandmother's heart. Amara had always wondered about her parents. Why they were never around, why they never came to visit or even sent a letter. But every time she asked, her grandmother would give her a sad smile and change the subject. "You have me, child. That's all you need to know," she would say, and Amara would nod, accepting the answer without question. But deep down, Amara knew there was more to the story. She just didn't know how to find out. One night, when the moon was full and bright, her grandmother called her over and asked her to sit. "There's something I need to tell you, Amara," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "It's time you knew the truth about your past. It's time you knew why your parents are not here." Amara's heart pounded in her chest, and she leaned forward, eager to hear the story she had been waiting for all her life. "Many years ago," her grandmother began, her voice heavy with sorrow, "I made a terrible decision. A decision that still haunts me every day. You see, when you were just a baby, your parents, they were poor. Very poor. They had nothing. And in our village, when there is nothing left to give, sometimes we make the hardest of choices." Amara listened closely, her breath catching in her throat. "One night, when the harvest was bad and your parents could not pay their debts, a strange man came to our door. He was tall, dark, and had the most terrifying eyes. He offered us a deal. He said he could give us wealth beyond measure, enough to take care of everything. But there was one catch. He wanted something in return." Amara's eyes widened. She had never heard this before. The man wasn't human, Amara. He was a snake king. And he wanted a wife. He wanted a beautiful woman to be his bride. And, child, I gave him you. The words hit Amara like a slap in the face. She couldn't breathe, couldn't understand what her grandmother was saying. No, that's not possible. I'm not a wife. I'm just a child," she cried, her voice trembling with disbelief. Her grandmother's face was full of sorrow, and for the first time, Amara saw the guilt that had been hidden all these years. "I didn't know what else to do, Amara. Your parents were desperate. They had no choice. And I thought I was saving you. But I didn't know what I was condemning you to. The Snake King had taken her grandmother explained. He had kept her hidden in his dark palace deep within the jungle, where no one dared to go. And there, he had made her his queen. But over the years, he had become crueler and more demanding, and Amara had grown restless, longing for her freedom. Her grandmother had tried to rescue her many times, but the Snake King's power was too great. Now, after years of suffering, Amara was faced with a choice: stay and be the Snake King's wife forever, or find a way to break the curse and escape. But how could she do that? How could she escape the grip of the Snake King, when every step she took seemed to pull her deeper into his world? With every passing day, Amara grew stronger. She learned the ways of the Snake King's palace, how to navigate the treacherous paths that led to his heart. But with every secret she uncovered, she also uncovered more dangers that threatened her life. One day, while exploring the jungle in search of a way out, Amara stumbled upon a mysterious old woman who claimed to know the secret of the Snake King's curse. The woman warned her of the dangers of attempting to break free, but Amara refused to back down. She was tired of being a prisoner in her own life, tired of the endless cycle of fear and pain. To break the curse, you must give up something you love, the old woman said cryptically. But be warned, child. Sometimes breaking free means losing everything. Amara stood tall, her heart racing. She didn't know what the old woman meant, but she knew that her time had come. The Snake King's grip on her life was weakening, and she could feel the pull of freedom growing stronger with each passing day. But as she made her way back to the palace, she knew that the hardest part was yet to come. What would she have to sacrifice to break free? What would it cost her to free herself from the Snake King's grasp? And so, Amara stood at the gates of the palace, the weight of her decision heavy on her shoulders. The Snake King was waiting, watching, ready to claim her as his own once again. But this time, things would be different. This time, Amara was ready. Will Amara break free from the Snake King's grasp? Will she sacrifice everything she holds dear to escape? Or will she be bound to the Serpent King forever? Stay tuned for the next part of Amara's journey, where the darkness will rise and the truth will be revealed. Amara stood at the edge of the Snake King's palace, her heart pounding in her chest. The walls were tall and dark, winding serpentine patterns etched into every stone. The palace itself seemed alive, watching her, waiting for her to make a decision. The night was thick with tension, and the full moon bathed the world in its cold light. Amara could hear the faint hiss of the Snake King's guards in the distance, their slithering bodies blending into the shadows like ghosts. She knew that crossing this threshold meant entering into a world where nothing was what it seemed, a world where even her very soul could be claimed. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Not like before. She had lived in fear for so long. Shackled to the king's demands, living in a cage of gold and darkness. Tonight that would change. As she stepped forward, the gates creaked open before her, as if the palace itself recognized her purpose. Her breath caught in her throat. She was standing at the precipice of something far greater than herself, but also something that could destroy everything she had ever known. She entered the palace, and the air inside was thick and heavy with a scent she could never quite place. Something ancient, something that smelled of death and power. The grand hall stretched endlessly before her, its high ceilings adorned with glittering gems that sparkled like the stars she had always admired. And there, at the end of the hall, was the Snake King. He towered over her, his form an unsettling combination of man and serpent. His eyes glowed like fire, flickering with a cold, calculating intelligence. His scales shimmered under the moonlight that filtered through the palace's windows, and his voice, deep and hypnotic, echoed in the room. "So you have come, Amara," he said, his tone dripping with both admiration and menace. "I knew it would only be a matter of time. You are strong, far stronger than the others I have claimed. But know this, leaving me is not as simple as you believe. The curse that binds you is not just mine to lift. It is tied to your very soul." Amara's eyes widened, but she did not flinch. She had come this far, and she was not about to back down. "You are wrong, Snake King. My soul does not belong to you. It never did." The king's smile twisted with amusement. He circled her like a predator sizing up its prey. "You are naive, little one. You were mine the moment your grandmother made that deal. You think you can just walk away from this? There are consequences to trying to escape the fate that has been woven for you." Amara's heart raced as the weight of his words sank in. But she could not stop now. She had to keep going for herself, for her parents, and for all the children he had taken before her. She had to break the chains, no matter the cost. I'll find a way, she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. No matter what you say or do, I will never be yours. The Snake King's eyes glowed brighter, his laughter filling the vast hall. Very well. But remember, Amara, you cannot escape without giving up something dear to you. The old woman was right. You must choose your freedom or your heart's deepest wish. Before she could speak, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and the walls of the palace seemed to close in on her. Amara's vision blurred, and the voices of those she loved began to echo in her mind. Her grandmother, her parents, the people she had never met but had longed to be with. For the first time in her life, Amara felt as though she was truly alone, trapped in a world where nothing made sense. The weight of her choice hung in the air, suffocating her. The Snake King reached out, his long, scaled hand brushing against her cheek with an unsettling tenderness. You have one chance to make your decision, child. Choose wisely, for your heart will either shatter, or you will walk away victorious. But only one can be true. Amara closed her eyes, her hands trembling. She had heard the stories, the warnings. She knew what it meant to make a sacrifice. But could she really give up everything she had dreamed of? Could she truly choose to leave behind her desires, her hopes, her love? She thought of her grandmother, of the pain and regret in her eyes. She thought of the life she could never have, the future she could never taste, and the family that had been stolen from her. She thought of all the children, all the souls the Snake King had stolen over the years. Could she really leave them all to suffer, to be trapped in the same curse? The king was waiting, his patience thinning with every passing second. Your choice, Amara, he hissed. Will you take my offer, or will you walk away? Amara took a deep breath, her chest heavy with the weight of her decision. She knew the consequences would be severe. She knew that breaking free might cost her everything she held dear. But she also knew that if she didn't act now, she would be trapped forever. With a final glance at the king, she turned, her heart racing as she stepped toward the palace doors. The ground shook beneath her, the palace's walls groaning as if in warning. But Amara did not look back. Will Amara make it out? What will she have to sacrifice in order to break free? The answers lie within the very heart of the jungle, and with every step she takes, she moves closer to a truth that could change everything. Stay tuned for the next part, where the darkness begins to unravel, and the price of freedom will be revealed. Amara's footsteps echoed through the hall as she hurried toward the palace gates, the sound of her heart racing louder than the clattering of her shoes against the cold, stone floor. The air was thick with the Snake King's presence, his eyes still burning into her back like a fire she couldn't escape. But she refused to stop, refused to turn around, no matter how much the palace seemed to pull her back, no matter how much it threatened to swallow her whole. The gates loomed ahead of her, but as she neared, something changed. The walls of the palace seemed to twist and stretch, warping her vision. The familiar, towering gates began to shrink, fading into shadows that seemed to dance and mock her. Amara's breath caught in her throat. No, not now! Her pulse raced as the palace walls closed in on her, forcing her to pause. It was like the palace itself was trying to keep her, to claim her once again. Where do you think you're going, Amara? The voice was low, seductive, and filled with malice. It slithered through the air, wrapping around her like a cold, tight coil. She froze, her body tensing. The Snake King appeared before her, stepping out from the shadows with the grace of a predator. His form seemed to ripple and shift, his long, serpentine body coiling around him like a living cloak. His eyes glowed brighter now, burning with an intensity that threatened to consume her. I told you, you cannot escape me, the Snake King said, his voice a deep, velvety hiss. You belong to me, Amara. No matter how far you run, you will always return. Amara stood her ground, her chest heaving with the effort to stay calm. I can't go back now. I won't. Her mind raced as she desperately searched for a way out, a way to escape this nightmare that had claimed her life for so long. Please, she whispered, her voice trembling but strong. I don't belong to you. I never did. I am not your prisoner. The king chuckled darkly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. You're mistaken, child. You've been mine from the moment you were born. Your blood, your soul, they are bound to me forever. A wave of fear washed over Amara, but she pushed it aside. She couldn't let him win. She couldn't let him have control over her life any longer. Not after everything she had endured. I'll fight you, she said fiercely, her eyes narrowing with resolve. I'll fight until I can no longer breathe. I will never be yours. The Snake King's eyes narrowed, his smirk fading into something darker, something colder. For a moment, there was silence, heavy and tense. You truly think you can defy me? His voice was laced with venom, his anger rising. You are but a child playing in a world far beyond your understanding. Amara's fingers clenched into fists, her heart thundering in her chest. She felt the walls of the palace pressing in, the weight of the Snake King's power suffocating her. But she also felt something else, a spark, a glimmer of hope she had never known existed within her. I may be just a child, she said, her voice steady now, but even a child can break free if they believe they deserve freedom. The king hissed, his form writhing as if disturbed by the mere thought of Amara's words. He raised a hand, and the ground beneath her feet cracked and trembled. But Amara didn't flinch. She didn't move. Her mind raced. The old woman's words. She said I had to sacrifice something to break the curse. What if it's not just my freedom I have to give? What if it's something deeper? She remembered the old woman's warning, sacrifice something dear to break the curse. But what did that mean? Was it her freedom? Her love? Her hope? And then, a thought hit her with the force of a storm. Her grandmother. Amara's eyes widened. Her heart lurched as the truth dawned on her. The Snake King had taken everything from her, but there was still one thing, one person, he hadn't fully claimed yet. Her grandmother. The woman who had made the deal all those years ago. The woman who had held the secret to her past. Could it be that the Snake King's grip on her wasn't just about her? Could the curse be tied to her grandmother's own actions, to the bargain she had made? The realization was both horrifying and freeing. If she was going to escape, if she was going to finally break the curse, she would have to confront her grandmother, and the decision her grandmother had made all those years ago. The Snake King watched her carefully, as if sensing a change in her. You think you can fight me, Amara? You think you can undo what has been done? Amara's voice trembled, but her resolve was stronger than ever. I don't need to fight you, she said, her eyes locking onto his. I need to face the truth. The ground trembled again, and Amara felt herself pulled forward by an invisible force. The king reached for her, but she was ready now. She knew what she had to do. But just as she reached for the truth, the ground beneath her feet shattered completely, and darkness swallowed her whole. What is the truth Amara must face? Can she escape the Snake King's clutches? And what will be the cost of her freedom? Find out in the next part of Amara's journey, where the past and present collide, and the future is rewritten. Amara fell into the darkness, her body weightless as though she were floating in the deepest part of the night. The world around her was nothing but an endless abyss, silent and empty. Her heart pounded in her chest, louder and louder, until it felt like the only thing that existed was her breath and the cold void that consumed her. She didn't know how long she fell. Time seemed irrelevant here, lost in the space between worlds. All she could feel was a strange pull, an invisible force guiding her deeper, closer to something she couldn't yet understand. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Her feet landed softly on the ground, and the darkness around her slowly began to fade, revealing a scene she had never seen before.